Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox series. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Soon to be the host of the one and only gaming podcast on IGN as Microsoft continues to buy everyone.
Microsoft is going to buy up all the IGN podcasts. Oh, no. And Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
I mean, if Activision tried to buy Kotaku at some point, anything's possible these days.
That's true. Anything is surely possible. Dear viewers, I'll be honest with you. When you're producing a weekly show like this for over 2 years, there are some slow news weeks now and then where it can be a challenge to figure out what we're going to talk about. But that is not this week, my friends. We're only in January of 2022, but this week we got what will probably end up being the biggest news of the year. I don't even know. It's still hard to say it out loud. Microsoft intends to acquire Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion. By far the largest acquisition of any video game company ever. It's 10 times as much as Microsoft paid for Bethesda, and that was a big deal. And this puts Xbox in control of gigantic video game franchises like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, StarCraft, and many more. Where to begin? Ryan, I'm sure you talked about this at length on Podcast Unlocked this week. I'm sure Podcast Beyond addressed this. So everyone out there, after you're finished watching this, go check out this week's Unlocked and Beyond podcast. But Ryan, what was your immediate reaction to this real bombshell of a story?
Like, honestly, numb shock. Like the Bethesda acquisition for a pittance of $7.5 billion not too long ago. That was honestly maybe more exciting to me as a gamer in the sense that it was the first one of these like major mega buys. I mean, Microsoft went from buying studios over the last few years, to the tail end of the Xbox One generation of Double Fine and Playground and Ninja Theory and all these, Undead Labs and various other studios, to buying entire publishers. And that was earth shaking because like Todd Howard works for Microsoft, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, Quake, all this stuff. But now this it's almost just tough to process in the sense that actually, Activision, I believe, Daemon, is the largest third-party publisher, I believe. I don't have any actual data in front of me, but last I remember reading that was the case. They certainly control, unquestionably, the biggest third-party game on the console market, that being Call of Duty, which is just the number one selling game almost literally every single year. So yeah, it was it's a shock. It's one of those, like, I've been very, very fortunate to do this. I have my 20th anniversary in working in games media coming up later this year. Oh. And this is one of those, like, for what we do, Damon, it's one of those, you remember where you were when you heard the news kind of moments.
Yep, that's true. I've never seen anything like it in my 15 years of working in this industry, or in my 40 years of just, following the video game industry from an enthusiast perspective. I have many follow-up questions for Ryan, but Jonathon, what was your immediate reaction to this news?
Yeah, I mean, in my 16 years of existence, obviously I'm a bit younger. No, it's same as Ryan. I think it was shock because it is on such a monumental level. I currently work as a senior features editor here, but was covering news for us for my first few years here. And there have been really big stories in those years, but nothing comes even close to this because it is, as Ryan was saying, I guess it depends what you qualify as third parties, given companies like Tencent now and things like that. But Activision is undoubtedly, with Blizzard and with King as well, one of the biggest companies. And so to have that subsumed under the Microsoft brand is bringing so much of a chunk of the game industry under a single name. It was a shock because as Ryan said, Bethesda seemed like a big one. And then this happened. And I saw the headline. A friend of mine posted it on Discord as a message before I woke up, and I saw it and I thought, why did we post an April Fool's joke? Because
That's exactly what I thought too.
it's such a massive thing. Like PlayStation and Xbox aside of that, obviously we'll get into that. Like it is such a massive thing that fundamentally changes the game industry on such a level that we can talk about it all day and I would be happy to, but there's only so much we can assume about it because it's sort of I said it on Podcast Beyond, it breaks the seal in a certain way. It's a deal I never really thought would be possible in the near future. And because it's happened, anything could happen. And at this point, it now is not surprising because this was just so genuinely surprising in how mammoth it is.
And what makes it more shocking is neither the Bethesda deal nor this deal leaked. And there was no even rumor, hint, suggestion, no whisper, nothing. It just fell out of the sky like a nuclear bomb detonating over the industry. And so that just, that's hard to do in this day and age. Clearly, everybody that knew, which I suspect was as few people as possible in both organizations, they were loyal soldiers and did not leak anything to anybody, probably under threat of like career beheading if they were to say a word about it.
Yeah, it makes you think that it's a frighteningly small number of people that can make such a large and expensive decision. So Ryan, this is, almost assuredly a good thing for Microsoft and Xbox, but people seem split on whether it's a good thing for gamers in general. What do you think?
Well, we talked for over an hour on Unlocked, as you kindly promoted at the top, Damon. Yeah, if you want to check out our episode of Unlocked this week, we spent the entire show on it, and we had our senior news editor Kat Bailey on with us to help sort of parse through the whole thing. And the comparison I made, the analogy I made, just given that we work in IGN and the MCU is a big part of our day-to-day coverage and entertainment is a big part of our coverage. I made the comparison to the Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet. It's like, in the right hands, if Phil Spencer is Iron Man here, then this is a good thing. And I say that, I know that sounds like I'm speaking in joke form here, but in all seriousness, Microsoft does now have the power to number one, reshape what has been an extraordinarily toxic and unwelcoming place for far too many developers at this entire company, Activision, Blizzard, King. It has been a very public situation for a while now. The state of California has filed suit, is suing the company, Activision, Blizzard. You have there are a lot of accusations, allegations, and accounts of things that are just not what we want to see in any industry, and let alone, and certainly not the video game industry that we all love and we all want to be a part of. So Microsoft now will have the power to clean house, to slowly rebuild and reshape the culture, because it can't happen overnight. I mean, they can hopefully get rid of some bad apples, whomever they may be, when they do finally take the reins in 2023. But yeah, it is. They really have kind of set themselves up as the chance to walk the walk in the biggest way yet, as far as being a leader in this industry, as far as setting an example for inclusiveness and fairness and treating your developers well and just being good stewards of the entire game industry from not just players. Microsoft talks a lot about making player first decisions, and that's good and that's great. And those policies have served them well as the Xbox Series has continued to be very successful, like we talked about on last week's show. But the other side of it, the creation of the games is vital too. And there's an economic side to that, but there's a human side to that. So Microsoft now, they've stepped right into the lion's den here. If they don't clean up Activision, they will be cynically looked at as valuing the financial interest in Activision Blizzard and its properties over the well-being. It'll be said, well, you were just all talk about that, inclusiveness stuff. But if they do clean it up, and everything they've done so far at Microsoft has led me to be very optimistic about the chances that they will affect positive change here. They have a chance to really cement themselves as a key and wonderful part of the games industry, and I hope they will do that.
I hope so as well. What about from a content perspective? This gives Xbox control of those huge franchises like Call of Duty that I mentioned at the top of the show. It's hard to imagine a world where, the next Call of Duty or the one after that doesn't come out on PlayStation. And a lot of people, like to say, well, you don't spend $70 billion to put your games on other platforms. But the truth is, as much as we've talked about this question mark of exclusivity with these games and with Bethesda's future games, we haven't had the real test. Deathloop came out on PS5, but that's a new franchise. You'll have Ghostwire Tokyo. It's a new franchise. Starfield is a new franchise, even though that's going to be exclusive to Xbox. We haven't had the test of the next Elder Scrolls or the next Fallout or the next Wolfenstein. Yeah, the Doom. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, what do you think Microsoft's long-term plans are for these franchises?
Well, Microsoft is, and we've seen it, this is not new. This is not a thing that just happened because of this Activision buyout. They want you in their ecosystem. They've been very transparent, very open about that, whether that's on console, which remains very important to them, whether that's on PC Game Pass, or even now as they expand their cloud efforts through Game Pass, that you subscribe there and you can just stream games to your phone with a controller. That's great. So it is an ecosystem play, and they just want you in there. So they don't really care what platform you're on, and that means they've got to get you in. And how they do that? Well, they do that with exclusive games, same as Netflix does. The same reason you subscribe to Netflix is the same reason that you subscribe to Game Pass, because you want all those latest greatest games, and you want them easily accessible right in front of you. So while Call of Duty Warzone will likely probably remain available and supported on PlayStation, because that's a way you can still connect that way. That's a big community, but Call of Duty, I'm expecting Modern Warfare 2 from Infinity Ward this year, just given the 3-year cycle of how things have gone with Call of Duty. That's, as you said, that's going to be as is, business as is, because this acquisition won't finalize until next year. But after that, there's no reason that I would believe that Call of Duty the year-to-year Call of Duty will ever see the light of day on PlayStation again. And why would you? Why would you? Will it sell as much? No, but are you going to sell a heck of a lot more? And you're still bringing people into your ecosystem. So it's going to be fascinating to watch all this unfold.
It is fascinating because if what you're saying turns out to be true, this acquisition will represent the hard stop of Call of Duty being the best-selling game every year. Even if it's like in Game Pass and a lot of people are still playing it, you're just not going to be selling as many units, and that's what.
Well, Microsoft doesn't care because their Game Pass revenue goes way up, and buried in this was that Game Pass is at 25 million users now, continuing to grow, and this is only going to grow it. When you've got Diablo 4 in there when that comes out, when you've got are they going to put World of Warcraft in PC Game Pass? That's a subscription. I don't know. Maybe if they do, that's probably going to drive subs as well, because if you're a dedicated WoW player, well, you might as well just spend the money on PC Game Pass instead of your subscription, because you'd get your WoW and a whole bunch of other stuff. So the ramifications of this, Game Pass is fueling a lot of this. That's what's interesting.
Jonathan, what do you think? Is this a loss for PlayStation? Should PlayStation gamers be worried that, if they like playing Call of Duty on PlayStation, should they be worried?
I mean, to Ryan's point, I think the realistic expectation is that this year's Call of Duty, everything will be normal. Potentially, just based on where agreements are, we can't say next year's could be, but I think beyond that, it is exclusive to Xbox and PC going forward within that ecosystem, save for Warzone, because I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but I know Phil Spencer had sort of said existing communities, we're not trying to take away the games that you have. And we talked about this on Beyond. There is, of course, an existing community for a game like Warzone, in the same way there's an existing community for the Elder Scrolls Online, which seems to be continuing after the Bethesda acquisition to be on PlayStation, similarly with Minecraft before that. But there is no existing community for Black Ops 6 or Modern Warfare 4. Those games don't exist, even if people are playing Call of Duty. And so I do think it is going to be a pretty hard stop. And I do think Call of Duty is sort of the biggest part of that equation for PlayStation and what PlayStation players are going to lose, because at the end of the day, I do think, as Ryan was saying, there's a tremendous added benefits and bonuses that players will get by all of these games being in the Game Pass ecosystem, because there's so much crossover with PC. But I think Call of Duty, and to a lesser extent Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2, are sort of the main things here, because everything else sort of in the Blizzard pantheon is PC or mobile, and Activision otherwise stopped making games that aren't Call of Duty. So I do think it puts PlayStation in a weird position, because, you can see the sales results of the last year, digital downloads on PlayStation. Call of Duty Vanguard was the number 2 game behind NBA. And I believe the Call of Duty before that was also somewhere in the top 10, top 15. These are games that are reasons people buy PlayStations, reasons people buy PlayStations and tell their friends to buy PlayStations. And so, for the people who are already planning to buy a PS5 and things like that, I do think there's obviously a lot of stuff still to look forward to. I think within a year where we're getting God of War, Horizon, and Gran Turismo, it's by no means a worrying year for PlayStation to be off to. But that is a player base that really, really matters from the Call of Duty space. And I do think PlayStation will need to find reasons for people to come to PlayStation without that. And what that exact question, or what that exact answer is to that question, I don't think is clear, because you can't just say, well, we'll make a Call of Duty competitor. That's a little hard to do. We can see even, the closest competitor to it, Battlefield, had a really rocky launch recently with 2042, and has, had ups and downs throughout history, even as its closest competitor. So, it creates this interesting question. We talked a lot about it on Beyond this week of PlayStation has a bunch of options. I don't necessarily think any of them is the right or wrong option in terms of reviving old shooter franchises like Killzone or Resistance, creating new franchises, working with third parties, which we know they're doing for exclusive games from Firewalk Studios, which is, a pedigree of Destiny and Halo and Call of Duty developers, as well as Demolition Games, which comes from former Black Ops and Zombies directors for Call of Duty. So they clearly have kind of been knowing they need to get more of that market associated with PlayStation. But this just means they really need to focus on figuring out the answer to that.
And if Sony has deservedly so a lock on the cinematic, narrative, story-driven third-person action venture game, Microsoft has quite the foothold in the first-person shooter market. If you're a shooter fan, as I am, they control Halo, they control Call of Duty, Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein, and Overwatch. 6 major first-person shooter franchises that are now all under Microsoft's umbrella, which is crazy to think about for me as a first-person shooter fan.
Yeah. It's a weird genre question, and I do wonder, and I'm not saying this to in any way minimize the loss of Call of Duty, because it's not something you can minimize. It is a massive loss for PlayStation's, sales. I do wonder how much they'll continue to lean into what they've been doing with, I think, very clear association with free-to-play games, not just, first-person shooters, but things like Fortnite and Apex, and even games that are open world free-to-play games like Genshin are very big selling points for PlayStation these days. I wonder how much they'll continue to lean into that. I wonder how much they'll continue to use PlayStation Plus to sell unique and different multiplayer experiences, like we've seen them do with Rocket League, Fall Guys, and even getting games late like Deep Rock Galactic this past January doubled its player base because of PlayStation Plus. So I think PlayStation knows there is clearly a multiplayer appetite on their system. But finding out how to cater to that when you don't have the most popular game that people buy year in and year out is a massive question that needs to be answered. And I don't think the question is just, well, make a Call of Duty equivalent. I don't think that's the way to go. But what is the right way to go, I think, is a very open-ended question.
So let's look a little bit further down the road, beyond the life of the Xbox Series X, whatever the next Xbox is. Ryan, you've said in the past you don't believe, the video game console in a traditional sense is going away. People will still want, a box under their TV. But I could see a situation where the audience kind of splits, and the box under your TV becomes a little bit more of like a niche, high-end item for the, for lack of a better word, the hardcore gamer. Because now Microsoft they control so many gigantic gaming franchises that have a lot of casual fans that don't play anything else. There are people that only play Call of Duty, people that only play World of Warcraft, people that only play Skyrim. And now, like you said, they want people in their Game Pass ecosystem. Maybe they have the enough content now that they can attract people that maybe they're happy with the convenience and accessibility of just playing their games through Game Pass. They've got xCloud, building that up as well too, and they don't need to have that expensive box under the TV. But people like ourselves that consider themselves gaming enthusiasts maybe will still want to keep that box. Does that seem like a scenario that could come to pass next generation?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can see the writing on the wall that that's. I stand by my statement that the console, the set-top box, is going to continue to be a vital part of the Xbox ecosystem for a long time. But I think you'd be fooling yourself to suggest that Microsoft isn't trying to get cloud gaming to just turn Xbox into an app on every smart TV and then just pipe in your Call of Duty every year. If they've got you for $15 a month, that's what matters. I mean, it's the same. Netflix it's an app on your TV or an app on your console. It's just you get it on whatever device you have. So just Bluetooth up a controller and just go buy an Xbox controller and download the Xbox app on your TV, and that's going to be a viable way for people to play and be part of the Xbox ecosystem and be spending money in the Xbox ecosystem for into the next generation. And we're not there yet. Microsoft's working on this cloud solution, and what I think is going to happen. The topic of our show last week about the sales of both consoles being stronger than their previous generation, stronger than any previous generation, despite there still being a chip shortage. It's just, again, the entire industry is growing, and that's Microsoft is thinking in terms of billions of gamers around the world here, not tens of millions or even the PlayStation 4, 20 million, Jonathan,
so
which is
almost 120 million.
Yeah, incredible. That's an incredible achievement. But Microsoft is aiming. They're looking to throw another zero or two, another comma in that. So they're willing to spend money to do it because it's whoever gets there is going to be extraordinarily wealthy. I mean, not that Microsoft isn't already. So yeah, I think Microsoft will continue to sell more consoles than ever, and Sony will too. And Microsoft is just looking to try and get to the PC and get to the mobile market and get to TVs. I mean, that's what they need to grow that base. There are only so many people that are going to be willing to buy a console in 2022, in 2032.
Jonathan, just considering this possible future for Xbox, what would that mean for the PlayStation 6? As of, there are rumors that PlayStation has some sort of Game Pass competitor, but as of right now, their business models are pretty different. And PlayStation is still trying to sell people games, and their game console is very important. There's no other way to play PlayStation games, aside from the ones that they release on PC. So do you think Microsoft would force Sony's hand into try and join them in more of a service-oriented option for PlayStation 6, or can they keep going the route that they're going and a little more traditional, selling you new games at $7 a pop?
Totally. No, I mean, it is a very deep and I think multifaceted question and answer. And I think the only people who know the answer are the Sony executives of what to do. But I think in general, Xbox to a certain extent is following the template that the movie and TV industry has been doing with the streaming wars there. John Davison, put up an op-ed earlier this week about this. This isn't a who can sell the most boxes, it's who can get the most mind share with their content. And that is, I think, where it's going to continue escalating for better or for worse. I think you could have a lot of deep sort of philosophical discussions about how great the sort of streaming wars actually are for people on the movie and TV side. But at the very least, I think, this shows PlayStation and Xbox. We talked about this, I think, at the beginning of this generation. They both have different goals in mind right now. And I think that's becoming clearer and clearer by the day. Both have different goals from Nintendo, who we can't discount, is also continuing to sell incredibly well and finds continued success doing what they do very well. That is a little bit different from what PlayStation is doing, and it's quite different from what Xbox does. That's all a circuitous way to say I think it will probably push PlayStation into more of a streaming focused service plan. Whether that is the best thing for the industry, I don't think is something any of us can really say. But I do think PlayStation is also going about things a little bit differently right now because on the content war side of things, they're trying to position their content as not just games, which I don't think Microsoft is doing as much currently. Obviously, they have the Halo show coming out, but PlayStation started a PlayStation Productions arm, has the Last of Us HBO series in the works, has a Ghost of Tsushima movie, a Twisted Metal show, the Uncharted movie coming out, and I'm sure there's much more. I think they said they had 10 or 12 projects in the works a year ago. So, I think they are looking at trying to make their franchises multimedia in a way that people associate them as more broadly favorable things, in the same way that Sony as a larger company is trying to make everyone associate Spider-Man with Sony, even though it's a Marvel franchise, but Sony owns the film rights. It's associated with them on the game side. I think we're going to see them try to do similar things in that sort of avenue. And whether that's the correct way, I'm not saying it is, but I see them moving in that direction. But I think almost undoubtedly a move like this will force PlayStation to reassess what their streaming and subscription service plans are, what their plans are for acquisitions going forward, because I'm sure they weren't going to stop all of a sudden. But I don't think they're going to suddenly buy a company at the Activision level, but I do think they might look at more game by game exclusives and things of that nature. I think we could continue to see them move in that direction. And whether that's the right call, I genuinely don't know. But I do think, going back to I could never have predicted the news this week. I don't think we can quite predict what the moves are going to be in the next year, but it's going to be fascinating to see them play out. Like, it is genuinely thrilling to see, as much as it is worrying and concerning about what the state of the industry could be as consolidation happens and things like that. As exciting as it is that a company like Activision might see things cleaned up, as Ryan was saying earlier, with so many sort of bad actors at the top possibly being put out of the picture so that people can have better working conditions. Like, there are so many different aspects of this. Again, we were saying we could talk about this for hours. What PlayStation does in short, I don't know, but I do think this will certainly cause them to reevaluate and determine what they're doing on the subscription front.
Boy, this conversation is just so indicative of how high the stakes have been raised in gaming. I mean, this was put to my attention the day that the announcement of the acquisition by Microsoft was made. I had forgotten about this. In 2012, shortly after I joined IGN, I wrote an opinion piece saying, what if Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, which was predicated on, at the time, Vivendi, who was the parent company of Activision Blizzard, had a bunch of debt and was looking to sell a 61% stake, or their 61% stake in Activision Blizzard for what was estimated to be $8 billion. So in 10 years, again, you'd have to extrapolate that out. That'd be more like, 14 billion for 100% of the company. So look how far in 10 years, just the stakes are so much higher that companies are willing to pay, 5 times more, four or 5 times more than 10 years ago for these giant, IP rich entertainment and gaming companies.
Yeah. Well, the dust has not even begun to settle on this Microsoft and Activision acquisition. It's a huge story that we'll be following for the rest of the year, both on IGN and on this very show. Before we go, we have the results of last episode's poll, and we asked, what Q1 2022 game are you most looking forward to? Early 2022 game. And unsurprisingly, the winner was Elden Ring with 38% of the votes. I know that it's a cross-platform game, and everyone's super excited for that. But Horizon Forbidden West is not far behind it with 32% of the vote, even though that's a PlayStation exclusive. But way down at the bottom, another PlayStation exclusive, Jonathon, only 5.8% said they were most excited about Gran Turismo 7. Is that surprising to you? I guess it's been a while since Gran Turismo has been on top of the racing game, and obviously Forza Horizon 5 was a big hit last year. I don't know. What do you think? Does Gran Turismo 7 have a hard fight ahead of it?
I mean, I think it certainly has a harder fight than it would have had it been a bit more of a consistent release schedule for the franchise. You know, the last numbered Gran Turismo is now a long time ago, and Gran Turismo Sport was the only one released on the PS4. There has been entire Forza Horizon, evolutions, Forza Motorsport evolutions. It is a much more crowded field for sure, but the number doesn't surprise me, if only because I do think the more hardcore racing simulation thing is just not something I necessarily always associate with everyone who comes to IGN every day for news to necessarily be their most anticipated game. Not that it isn't anticipated by IGN readers, but I think in terms of what's ahead and what we tend to see by our audience interests, it doesn't surprise me, but I also don't think it's necessarily a sign Gran Turismo might do poorly. I just don't. I don't know if it will do as well as past Gran Turismos, because we are in a very different market for that genre currently.
Yeah. And in all fairness, Forza Horizon 5 is not a realistic racing sim the way Gran Turismo is.
Oh, yeah.
A poll for you to vote on for next episode. We want to know, does this Activision acquisition make you want an Xbox? Make sure to vote at IGN.com. We'll share the results with you next episode, which should be arriving next Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more PlayStation 5, Xbox Series news. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Alan working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Damon, and we'll see you next time.